Have you ever had one of those moments where everything is technically fine, but it still doesn't feel like enough? You scroll for a few seconds, maybe on your phone before bed. Someone your age just got a new car. Someone else moved into a better apartment. Another person is traveling, smiling, living what looks like a completely different life. And suddenly, your own life doesn't feel as solid as it did a minute ago. It's strange, right? Because nothing about your situation actually changed in those 30 seconds. Your job is still the same. Your routine is still the same. Your life didn't suddenly get worse. But your mind, it did something subtle, almost invisible. It started comparing, and once that starts, something else quietly follows. That feeling of, I should be further than this. Even if you don't say it out loud, even if you try to ignore it, it stays there. Reframe the problem. Most people think comparison is just about jealousy, like you see someone doing better and you feel a little envy, then move on. But that's not really what's happening. Comparison is deeper than jealousy. It's not about wanting what someone else has. It's about questioning your own progress without realizing it. And the worst part is, it doesn't even require real success from other people anymore. Just a screen and a few seconds of attention. We live in a time where you can see hundreds of lives in one sitting, carefully edited, highlighted, filtered, and compressed into the best moments. And your brain doesn't consciously say, this is curated. It just absorbs it as reality. So you end up comparing your behind-the-scenes life with everyone else's highlight reel. But here's the part most people miss. The problem isn't that others are doing better. The problem is that your mind has no natural stopping point anymore. There used to be a limit. You'd compare yourself to people in your neighborhood, your school, your job. Now the comparison pool is infinite. And when the pool is infinite, satisfaction becomes unstable. Not because your life is bad, but because your reference point keeps moving. Deep explanation. Let's slow this down. Imagine two people. One person makes 40,000 a year and lives around others making the same. They feel normal. Another person makes 40,000 a year, but spends their time online seeing people making 100,000, 500,000, even millions. Same income. Completely different emotional experience. So what changed? Not money. Reference points. Your brain doesn't evaluate your life in absolute terms. It evaluates in comparison. It asks, where do I stand relative to others? And this creates a strange effect. Even progress doesn't always feel like progress. Let's say someone goes from earning 2,000 a month to 3,000 a month. Objectively, that's improvement. But if their environment shifts at the same time, if they start seeing people earning 5,000 or 10,000, they don't feel richer. They feel behind. And this is where the emptiness starts forming, because now achievement doesn't create satisfaction anymore. It only creates temporary relief until the next comparison resets the feeling. And over time, something interesting happens psychologically. You stop asking, am I doing well? And start asking, am I doing better than them? And that shift quietly removes peace from the equation. Because there will always be someone ahead. Always. Even people at the top are comparing themselves to other people at the top. But there's another layer to this that most people don't notice. Comparison doesn't just affect how you see your success. It affects how you see your identity. You start attaching your self-worth to external markers. Salary, lifestyle, possessions, status signals. And when those markers don't match what you're seeing around you, your mind doesn't just feel behind, it starts to feel insufficient. That's the word people often don't say out loud, but they feel it. Insufficient, not enough. And this is where the emptiness comes in. Because even when basic needs are met, even when life is stable, even when nothing is wrong, the emotional system is still searching for validation through comparison. So you might be sitting in a perfectly fine life, but mentally living in a constant sense of lack. And here's the part that feels almost unfair. The more you try to fix it externally, the worse it can get, because every new upgrade becomes the new baseline. A better phone becomes normal in a week, a higher salary becomes expected, a better lifestyle becomes the new minimum, so your mind keeps moving the goalpost without asking you. And you're left chasing a feeling that keeps disappearing right after you reach it. The turning point. At some point, something shifts. And it usually happens quietly. You start to realize that the problem was never really other people doing better. It was the way your mind was measuring life, because comparison is not reality. It's a lens, and lenses can distort everything. Think about this for a second. Two people can live identical lives, but feel completely different about them depending on what they're exposed to. One feels grateful and stable, the other feels behind and stuck. Same reality, different perception. So the question slowly changes from, how do I catch up, to why does my mind keep making me feel like I'm behind in the first place? And that question is important, because once you see comparison as a mental habit instead of a truth, something softens, not immediately, not perfectly, but enough to create space. Space between what you have and how you feel about what you have. And in that space, something new becomes possible. Not constant satisfaction, but stability. A kind of internal grounding that doesn't shake every time you open your phone. Practical takeaways. So, what actually helps in real life? Not in an extreme or unrealistic way, just something you can actually live with. One of the first shifts is reducing invisible comparison triggers. Not cutting yourself off from everything, but noticing what consistently changes your emotional state. Sometimes it's certain accounts, sometimes it's specific content, sometimes it's just endless scrolling when you're already tired. It's not about discipline, it's about awareness. Another shift is learning to measure your life against your past, not against someone else's present. Because your real progress exists in time, not in comparison. Where were you mentally a year ago? How did you handle stress back then compared to now? What problems did you solve that used to overwhelm you? This is progress that comparison usually hides. And finally, there's something simple but powerful, learning to separate exposure from expectation. Just because you see a lifestyle doesn't mean it becomes your standard. It's just information, not instruction, not requirement, just information, and when you treat it that way, it loses a lot of emotional weight. Closing reflection. The strange thing about comparison is that it never really tells you the truth about your life. It only tells you where you stand relative to someone else's highlight. And that's not a stable place to build self-worth. Because the moment your mind is always looking outward for validation, peace becomes temporary. But when you start noticing the pattern, even slightly, as something changes, you don't suddenly stop comparing, but you stop believing every comparison. And that alone makes life feel lighter. Not perfect, not solved, just quieter. And in a way, that quietness is what most people are actually looking for when they chase more money, more success, more everything. Not more, just less internal noise. And maybe progress isn't about removing comparison completely. Maybe it's just learning not to let it define how you feel about your life.